Hello and welcome to Rhythmic Building Blocks, a series focused on learning about rhythm for guitarists and non-guitarists. So, everyone? This is episode 9, so we've come quite far. We started learning about the basic concept of rhythm, subdivision, counting, swing feel. We talked about patterns, clave, shifting patterns around to get different rhythmic modes. There's one more major piece of this that we haven't talked about yet, and that's the idea of call and response. I don't know if I even need to define call and response. It's such a natural part of just being a human and communicating with each other. It's even in children's music. Call and response is really just a set of two musical phrases where the second phrase is a direct commentary on the first. It's a pretty universal concept in music all over the world, but I do think it's interesting that in terms of American music styles, as with everything we've talked about in this series, call and response has a direct lineage back to Africa.
Emma, help me to pull these weeds. Oh, Emma, oh.
Now, this can happen a lot of different ways. The call and the response could be the exact same phrase.
Yes, I believe.
Or they could be different, more like a question and an answer.
I don't work for free. That's not the tea, hunty. So make it
The answer could be improvised.
No matter what I do.
Or the call could be improvised. Call and response can happen between a leader and the group, or just between two different musicians. For our purposes, we're going to focus on incorporating this call and response concept into the rhythms that we already have been playing in this series. So, looking at the list of rhythmic modes of the funk clave, which we did in the last video, we can just pick pretty much anything here. So let's do number 3. We can create a call and response feeling from any rhythm. The way that we do this is by using what my mentor Bernard Wright calls a dividing line to split the rhythm into two parts. Before the dividing line is the call, and after the line is the response. So what we want to do is to find some way to differentiate those two sections from each other. This could be a lot of different things. One easy way to do it on guitar is by making one section chords and one section single notes. So, for example, let's say we're playing on an A7 vamp. If I wanted to play a chord over that, I might do this chord here. Just a A7 chord here, E, G, and C sharp. And that would sound like this. Or if I wanted to play more like a single note thing, then maybe I would just pick this note here, this G, and that would sound like this. Now, using our dividing line, we can set the call as the chord and the response as the single note, and that sounds like this. Or we could switch those and make the call the single note and the chord the response. So hopefully you can hear how splitting the rhythm up like that gives it a lot more interest and forward momentum than just playing it one way or just the other way. Now here's the thing, that dividing line can go anywhere you want within that rhythm. So instead of putting it here, we could move it one note earlier here, and that would sound like this. bet you can see where we're going with this. We're going to practice every possible version of where you can put that dividing line. So what we'll do is we'll start by putting it as far left as possible, and then we'll keep moving it one note to the right until it's as far right as possible. So that's the concept. This is, of course, just a quick example. You should start slower, work your way up to this, and use whatever rhythms that you want to. Now, warning, it's going to be very tempting to immediately start to throw in some extra bits. I know, you've played some funk before, you got some moves, some slides, some pops, some long notes, some licky doodles. Cool. Nope. Don't do any of that. No one cares. No one cares. I know. Look, just take that stuff, put it in your back pocket, save it for later. This is not the time. Right now is the time to prove to me and to yourself that you can play something very simple, very well, over and over again. That fancy stuff is gonna come out naturally, and it's gonna sound so much better once you have taken the time to really develop your fundamentals. Trust me. So for now, keep every note short and play everything as evenly as possible. If you promise to practice really hard, I'll make the next video all about funky guitar styles. So it's good to keep the concept of call and response in your mind and try to see if you can incorporate it into all of your rhythmic playing. It doesn't have to be single notes and chords. It could be something as subtle as accenting one section. In other words, playing the call quieter and the response louder, or vice versa. And maybe even most frequently of all, call and response is something that can be split up between more than one player. Maybe you're not even playing one half of that equation at all. Maybe the bass is playing the call and you're playing the response. Or the vocals are the call and you're the response. Honestly, this is usually the case when I'm playing. If I play a rhythm that fills up an entire 2-bar loop, that doesn't leave a lot of room for other musicians to do anything. If I'm in a trio situation, that might work, but the more instruments you start adding into the mix, the more space you need to leave. When I'm playing in a band like Snarky Puppy, where there's upwards of 9 or 10 musicians on stage at once, I really have to leave a lot of space. I might only be playing 2 notes and a whole 2-bar vamp. That way, what I'm playing really matters and doesn't just muddy everything up. It's responding to everyone else that's playing. Now, as a guitar player, there might be times when you're still gonna keep the ghost note scratches going during those down times, so that's always an option that you have. But even still, sometimes silence is the most appropriate sound. The more you practice this, the more broadly I hope you will think about it as a concept and listen for it in other music. There's nothing that adds more maturity to your playing than the ability to listen to other musicians around you and play something that complements what they're doing. Seriously, people will love working with you. They'll be like,
"Wow, you make me sound so good."
Audiences might be impressed with flashiness, but musicians are always more impressed with taste. If you like this video, why not give it a like? That helps me out a bunch. I really appreciate it when you do that. And you could also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. If you want even more little behind the scenes videos and educational videos from me, you can go check out my Patreon page, patreon.com/ChrisMcQueen. That's it. See you next time. Now, this can happen a lot of different ways. the call and the response could be the exact same phrase. I didn't mean to rhyme. Now this can happen a lot of different ways. The call and the response could be the same phrase. No.